Sangye Cherdang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chernyen Gi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchu Sangye Drupar Shuk Sangye Cherdang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chernyen Gi Pe Sonam Ki Rola Pinche Sangye Drupar Shuk Sangye Cherdak Suki Chognam La Jangtu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chenyen Gi Pe Sonam Ki Rola Pinche Sangye Drupar Shuk.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Good morning again, everybody. So let's just do a couple of minutes meditation on the breath. So think the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. That depends upon studying, thinking about, meditating on, realizing the entire path, all the steps on the path to enlightenment. Therefore, I'm going to study the seminal lamrim text, A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment by the great Atisha, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So, very briefly like that, generate the bodhicitta motivation for this morning's session. Okay, thank you. So last time we finished verse 33, now we're up to verse 34. So there are 68 verses, so congratulations, we've got halfway through. What was it been, like 5 years? Anyway, making great progress. So verse 34 reads, all Buddhas say the cause for the completion of the collections, whose nature is merit and exalted wisdom, is the development of higher perception. The Geshe Sonam Rinchen says, in the state of enlightenment, our wisdom truth body is the fulfillment of our own highest aims, while our form bodies are for the well-being of others. In order to attain enlightenment, we must complete the stores of merit and insight, and the best way to do this is by working for others. This is done most effectively with the help of extrasensory perception, which depends upon the development of a calmly abiding mind. The text now explains the reasons for developing such higher perception and how to do so. Often in the early days, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to start the teaching after doing the motivation. Remember I mentioned before that he used to start with quoting a verse from Shantideva or Khunu Lama Rinpoche, bodhicitta verse, and then giving a brief commentary on that, and that served as the bodhicitta motivation for the session and for the day. Then he'd say, after doing the motivation, he'd say something like, so the teaching today is a Mahayana teaching, and it which has come down to us from the two great forerunners, with the two lineages of teaching, method and wisdom. So referring there to the wisdom lineage that went from Shakyamuni Buddha to Manjushri to Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, and then down through Chandrakirti and Shantideva and so on, down to Atisha. And then the method lineage, which went from Shakyamuni Buddha to Maitreya Buddha, and then to Asanga and Vasubandhu, and then down through the method lineage. So there's a there's a chart in the back of liberation in the palm of your hand that has the names of all the lineage lamas, the Indian and I'm not sure how far down it goes, if it comes down to the present or not. Someone's got a book, they can look it up. Liberation. So that's what Atisha is talking about here. So these two lineages came down to Atisha, and then through the Kadampa Geshis, and then to Lama Tsongkhapa and so on. So for us, the wisdom lineage sort of culminates in the attainment of the Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya, the wisdom truth body of the Buddha, and so that's done, as Geshe-la says, the attainment of the wisdom truth body is the fulfillment of our own highest aims. So the wisdom lineage leads to our enlightenment and to our attaining the Dharmakaya. Kaya is the Sanskrit for holy body of wisdom. And the method lineage results in our attainment of the Rupakaya, the form body, which has the two aspects, the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. And that's done for the benefit of others. Because when we attain enlightenment, if we just remain in the Dharmakaya, that cannot be communicated with by sentient beings. Only other Buddhas can see our Dharmakaya. So in order to benefit others, which was the whole point of getting enlightened, then we have to manifest in different forms so that sentient beings can communicate with us. So we manifest to teach higher bodhisattvas, those on the 8th, 9th, and 10th level, to help them complete the path to enlightenment. We manifest as the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body, sometimes called. And then to communicate with beings lower than that, like us, then manifest as the Nirmanakaya, such as Shakyamuni Buddha. So that's what this is saying. So then the next verse, 35, says, just as a bird with undeveloped wings cannot fly in the sky, those without the power of higher perception cannot work for the good of living beings. So Geshe-la's commentary, just as hens can't fly because their wings are not sufficiently developed for flight, our work for others is hampered without the different forms of higher perception. 36, the merit gained in a single day by one who possesses higher perception cannot be gained even in 100 lifetimes by one without such higher perception. So enormous merit can be created in even a single day if we have these forms of super knowledge, a merit that would otherwise take eons to develop. So, everyone's talking about superpowers and superheroes these days. Well, the Tibetans knew about it a long time ago. Super knowledge. 37. Those who want swiftly to complete the collections for full enlightenment will accomplish higher perception through effort, not through laziness. If we're sincere in our wish to gain enlightenment swiftly for the sake of all beings, which is what we promise to do when we take the Bodhisattva vow, we must develop these different types of higher perception as the surest way of completing the great stores of merit and insight. We'll only gain them if we know how, and set about creating the necessary causes and conditions. If we're lazy about doing this, our wish to develop them is futile. Without the 38, without the attainment of calm abiding, higher perception will not occur. Therefore, make repeated effort to accomplish calm abiding. So let me, before reading Geshe Tsonom Rinpoche's commentary on that, let's just talk a little bit about calm abiding. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah. So you can see that chart. You're familiar with this, right, everybody?
We're seeing, well, I'm seeing anyways, the Zoom Zoom page on the web browser.
You can't see this? You can't see my screen?
I think we're seeing your web browser. So I think when you do share screen, I think maybe there's an option to pick different different things.
Really? What's that? I did this yesterday and it worked in another class. But remember, Bill? So what are you seeing actually?
We're seeing the web browser. Well, I'm seeing the web browser on the Zoom page.
Like this, crystal clear audio.
Crystal clear audio, even if the lingo isn't.
So when I...
Maybe try again. Maybe stop the share and try sharing again, picking again.
Okay, sorry about this. Advanced sharing options. It doesn't say anything. You cannot modify the advanced sharing options. These settings are locked by your admin.
Oh, that's weird.
Let me just try again anyway.
There we go.
Got the Shine chart?
See the Shine chart.
Okay. So I don't know why that didn't work the first time, but here we are. So you've all seen this before, I guess. So this represents the 9 stages of calm abiding. So actually, the commentary starts, there to make repeated effort to accomplish calm abiding without laziness. How is it done? By practicing placement meditation, and developing meditative stabilization, in which bliss, the outcome of total mental and physical pliancy. So that's like, I think this flying monk or up here is experienced. This is calm abiding. Maitreya's ornament for the Mahayana Sutras describes, so that's one of the 5 texts that Maitreya taught to a Sangha. When a Sangha went to Tushita, that long story about him meditating for 12 years in the cave. He described 9 stages of increasing mental stability and clarity, which lead to this state. So these 9 stages are called, so we'll have a look at these in a minute, but the 9 stages that lead to the attainment of calm, abiding mind are setting the mind, continuous setting, resetting, close setting, disciplining, pacifying, thorough pacifying, making one-pointed, and setting in equipoise. So, you know, those things don't mean. We did a class years ago on the 9 stages, using a commentary by the 17th Gyalwa Karmapa, that was published in Shambhala Sun magazine, which is now Lion's Roar. I don't know if anyone was there for that. So this chart comes from one of the very first little books that I got when I got interested in Dharma. It's called Graduated Path to Liberation, teaching by Geshe Rapton. And strangely enough, to me, this was published by the Cambridge University Buddhist Society in England. I don't know what their connection was with Dharamsala and Geshe Rapton. It was published in '72. And it was one of the little things that was floating around Kopan, or around India and Nepal when at the time I got there. So, so this chart was included in the book as a separate piece of paper. And this you know, Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive, we have a sort of ancillary website, have I told you, called Teachings at Tibet. teachingsfromtibet.com. We were asked, we had all these teachings on teachingsfromtibet.com were on the lamayeshe.com website, but some of the FPMT people thought we should confine the teachings on the archive website, on the lamayeshe.com website, which is called the Archive of the FPMT, to teachings by Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, and then, you know, His Holiness and Lama Ursel and the Buddha. So it sort of was a little arbitrary. And then the other teachings by the Geshes and some of the other Rinpoches and so on, we put on this other sort of WordPress site called teachingsfromtibet.com. So this teaching is there, as is this chart. So Geshe Rapton says, so we're talking about this now. Go to the beginning. We haven't done this, have we? I've been through this with you guys. I think I did it a month ago for another thing. There are 2 enemies of concentration. In Tibetan, they're called Gurpa and Jingwa. Gurpa is busyness, wildness, or scattering of the attention. Jingwa is sleepiness, torpor, or sinking. Lama Yeshe calls it sluggishness. Gopa, the busyness, usually arises from a desire in which the mind immediately goes after. Whenever the mind goes after anything other than the object of concentration, this is Gopa. Jingwa is when the mind is sleepy and not alert. If one wants to concentrate well, one has to overcome these disturbances. If there's a beautiful picture on the wall of a dark room, you need a candle to see it. That was back then. If there's a draft, the flame will flicker and move so that you can't see it properly. If there's no draft, but the flame is very weak, there's not enough light, and you still can't see the picture. If there are neither of these difficulties, a draft and a weak flame, if there's neither of those, the flame will be strong and steady, and you'll be able to see the picture clearly. So the picture is like the object of concentration. The flame is the mind. The wind is Gopa. The weak flame is Jingwa, the sinking. So you can picture that quite clearly, I think. In the early stages of the practice of concentration, the first of these disturbances, Gopa, is more common. The mind immediately flies from the object after other things. So we might have had that experience at the beginning where we try to sit for 2 or 3 minutes, trying to focus on our breath. Our mind doesn't want to stay there. It almost immediately, for me anyway, it goes somewhere else, Anyway. This can be seen if we try to keep our mind on the memory of a face. It is immediately replaced by something else, or on the breath. It is very difficult to quell these disturbances because we've built up the habit of following them through many lives, and we're not used to concentration. It is very hard to take up the new and leave behind the old. Concentration is the basic necessity for all higher meditation and for all kinds of mind activity. So now a couple of other terms. Denpa, mindfulness or memory. Denpa and Shejin, clear comprehension of the state of mind. Combat Gopa and Jingwa. The elephant in the picture, so now we're looking down at the bottom here, where the elephant is all shaded, the elephant represents the meditator's mind. Elephants, once they're tamed, will never refuse to obey and will do very hard work. The same applies to our mind. If an elephant is wild and untrained, it can be very dangerous and wreak enormous destruction. If we do not control the mind, it can cause all kinds of suffering. Any suffering that we have now is through our and other people's minds being like wild elephants. The elephant also has very big footprints, which symbolize mental defilements. If we work hard at improving our mind, it will be able to do very great work for us. From the suffering of the hells to the happiness of the Buddhas, all states are caused by the behavior of the mind. At first, the elephant is black, which represents Jingwa, sinking of the mind. So, the sleepiness. In front of the elephant is a monkey, which represents Gopa, scattering of the mind. The monkey cannot keep quiet for a moment. It's always chattering or fiddling with something and is attracted to everything. At first, the monkey is leading the elephant. Gopa, scattering, leads our mind after things. Behind the elephant is a man who represents the meditator trying to train the mind. In one hand, he holds a rope. This is Denpa, so that's mindfulness. In the other, he holds a hook. This is shezhin, clear comprehension. So those are the mental tools we need to tame the mind. Mindfulness and clear comprehension. In the beginning, the monkey is leading the elephant, which follows it, paying no attention to the man who is chasing behind. The meditator has no control over his mind. In the second stage, he's almost caught up with the elephant. Then he throws the rope around the elephant's neck and it looks back. So that's this third one now in the middle. At this third stage, the mind can be restrained a little by Dempa, by mindfulness. There's now a rabbit on the elephant's back, symbolizing subtle jingwa or subtle sinking. Before, this state seemed like the nature of concentration, but now it can be recognized as a harmful factor. In these early stages, we have to use Dempa more than shezhin. We have to use mindfulness more than clear comprehension. At the fourth stage, the elephant is more obedient. So that's over here on the left. So less pulling with the rope, Dempa, mindfulness, is necessary. At the fifth stage, so here, the elephant is being led by the rope and hook, and the monkey follows behind. At this point, we are not much disturbed by scattering. We mostly have to use clear comprehension. At the sixth stage, the elephant and monkey follow behind obediently. So that's here on the right, in the middle. The man does not have to look back, focusing his attention continually on controlling his mind. He does not have to look back. In other words, that which means to focus his attention continually on controlling his mind. So in these previous ones, he's always looking towards the elephant and the monkey. So here now he's just looking forward. So the control of the mind is easier. The rabbit, the subtle jingwa, has disappeared, the subtle sinking. The subtle sinking has disappeared. At the seventh stage, the elephant can be left to follow of its own accord. So that's here on the right in the middle. So there's no hook or rope. The man has no need to use the rope and hook. The monkey takes its leave at this point. Gopa and Jingwa occur only mildly and occasionally, scattering and sinking. At the eighth stage, the elephant has turned completely white. It's here in the middle. And there's no rabbit, there's no monkey. And the monk is just ahead not looking at the elephant. And it follows behind the man. The mind is obedient and there's no sinking or scattering. Some energy is still needed to concentrate. At the ninth stage, the man sits in meditation and the elephant sleeps at his feet. The mind can continue to concentrate without effort for long periods of time, even days weeks, or months. At the 10th stage, the man is sitting on the elephant. So those 9 are the main stages. Now it's kind of icing on the cake. At the 10th stage, the man is sitting on the elephant. He now gets real shine, or real calm abiding, or shamatha in Sanskrit. At the 11th stage, the man is sitting on the elephant's back, holding a sword. So that's up in the top right there. At this point, a new kind of meditation called higher vision, or in other words, insight meditation begins. So you often hear Tibetan term shine laktong. So shine is this, shamatha, it's calm abiding, and laktong is higher insight. Okay, so now, just going back to the beginning, the picture also shows fire at each of the different stages. So you see the flames there, which represents the energy necessary for meditation. The fire gradually decreases at each of the 10 stages of shine. So you can see it's blazing like crazy down here on the bottom, and then it gradually gets less and less till we get to the 7th stage or so. Then meditation becomes effortless. It starts again at the 11th stage when the man starts practicing here insight. So we develop single pointed concentration, and then we use that sharp weapon like the sword. We use that as to cut through the veils of ignorance as we start seriously meditating on emptiness to realize it. Gopa, scattering, attracts our mind to the 5 sense objects, the objects of taste, touch, sound, smell, and vision, symbolized by food, cloth, musical instrument, perfume, and mirror. So we'll see that objects of taste. So here there's, over here, there's, I don't know, what is it? They look like Georgia peaches or something, some kind of fruit. And then there's cloth. So that symbolizes objects of touch. Sound, there's these symbols up here. Smell, I think this is incense coming out of this conch. I've never seen a conch incense burner, but I think that's what that is. Symbolizes objects of smell. And this mirror up here symbolizes visual objects. So I think these are represented in the order in which, the easiest to get rid of, the attachment to food, then, touch, smell, sound, smell, and visual objects in terms of, what the monkey is attracted to. The first 9 stages are the 9 ways of calm abiding. The 10th is perfectly accomplished, real real single point of contact, real shine. If we're practicing calm abiding, using, for example, an image of the Buddha as an object, as the object. So we've done over the years, several times we've done the practice of the Guru Shakyamuni Buddha meditation, where we visualize the Buddha in front of us. We first have to look at it very thoroughly. Then when we start meditating, we do not look at the object, but focus on it with the mind's eye. So we have a picture of the Buddha, especially if we find one that somehow we connect with, we find it more attractive for some reason than other images of the Buddha. So examine that tanka or that print or that painting very thoroughly, to checking all the details, his posture, face, lotus, sun and moon that he's sitting on, all these things. And then we close our eyes and then try to see the Buddha in front of us, maybe a body's length in front of us at the level of our forehead. But while the picture, where the image we're looking at could be a statue too, I guess, but usually that's not painted. You don't see so much different colors in that in a statue, even if it's painted. Usually they just paint the face. The image that we look at is two-dimensional, but when we visualize it, and it's material, it's made of whatever it's made of. So, but when we visualize, it's not a material object. It's completely made of light, and it's transparent and radiant and three-dimensional. And it's like we're looking at a living Buddha when we visualize in front of us there. At first, our memory of it will not be at all clear, but even so, we should not try to make it clear. This is impossible to start with, but just try to keep our attention on it, clear or not. The clarity will eventually come naturally. So also we were told in the beginning, when we try to visualize this kind of like nothing there, but then at least try to visualize light, try to see at least light, even if we can't see the image of the Buddha. The clarity will eventually come naturally as we practice. At the beginning, concentration is very difficult. The mind always flows this way and that. If we persist, we'll find that we're able to keep the mind on the object for 1 or 2 minutes, then 3 or 4 minutes, and so on. Each time the mind leaves the object, Dempa, mindfulness, memory, has to bring it back. Shejin, clear comprehension, has to be used to see if the disturbances are coming or not. Remember, I always talk about this sentry, watching for impending distraction. If a man is carrying a bowl full of hot water along a rough road, part of his mind has to watch the water and part has to watch the road. So mindfulness, Dempa, has to keep the concentration steady, and Shejin, clear comprehension, or sometimes we call it vigilant or watchful alertness, has to watch out for disturbances that may come. Later, we do not have to use mindfulness very often. With much practice, scattering subsides. Our mind is tired from fighting it, and this produces some jingwa, sinking. After a while, there comes a stage when the meditator feels much happiness and relaxation. This is often mistaken for real shine, but in fact, it is the subtle jingwa, the rabbit. It makes the mind weak. If we continue with energy, this will also disappear. When we remove this disturbance, our mind becomes clearer and more awake, and so the object becomes clearer. This clearness and freshness of the object increases, and the time of our meditation will increase. Our body will be sustained by our peace of mind. We will not have hunger or thirst. Eventually, a meditator can continue for months at a time. The feeling of his mind cannot be described. So as I like to say, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche sometimes calls this rapturous ecstasy. So that's his description of it. Rapturous ecstasy. If we look, so I think that's like the flying monk. If we look at a piece of cloth with our eyes, we can see it, but not in great detail. A person who concentrates on it well in his mind's eye can see it very clearly in all details. When a person is dying, their mind becomes weaker, but if they can practice meditation, their mind at this time becomes fresher and clearer. Normally, people, when they are dying, experience delusions and fears that lead to a bad rebirth. If a person meditates well, their mind will be concentrated on Buddha, Dharma, and so on when they're dying. And this helps very much for the next birth. In the 9th stage of Shine, calm abiding, we feel very happy and peaceful, but this is not the real end of meditation. Even if we're quite concentrated on the object, it is still not the complete achievement. The scriptures say that in the 9th stage, even if a wall crashes down next to the meditator, he will not be disturbed. If he continues to practice, he'll feel a special pleasure in mind and body. Then he's getting the real Shine goal. The body will feel light and tireless. Okay, so this is it. It's symbolized in the picture by a man flying. The body is very supple, and the mind can be turned to any meditation, like thin copper wires in electric flex, which can be turned in any direction without breaking. And I think that comes from Atisha. The person feels as though the object has become the same as their mind. So your mind becomes completely one with the object. Now, at the same time as he's concentrating, okay, I'm just going to keep this in the male person, this is how it's written. Now, at the same time as he's concentrating, his mind can look into the nature of the object. After continuing the simultaneous practice of both, he'll get special pleasure from seeing into the object. Seeing into the object involves seeing if an object is suffering or not, seeing if it's permanent or changeable, and looking for the highest truth to be found about the real nature of the object. The name for this meditation with insight in Tibetan is Hlagtong. Hlag means more or higher, and tong is to understand or realize. So higher insight. By this kind of meditation, the mind gets more understanding of the object than with simple concentration. When this has been perfected, the mind can turn to anything. The perfection of Hlagtong, insight, gives great spiritual satisfaction. But if one is satisfied with it, it's like when an airplane is built, ready to fly, but left on the ground. The mind can be turned to deeper and higher things. It has to be used, on the one hand, to overcome karma and delusion, and on the other, to get the virtues of a Buddha. For this, the object can only be emptiness. Other meditations prepare the mind for this. If we have very good flashlight, which can show up anything, we have to use its light to find out what is important. The root cause of all our trouble is ignorance. We have to use our knowledge of emptiness to dispel it. We must use our mind, purified by Shine and Laktong, by shamatha and higher insight, to cut the root of the tree of ignorance. In the illustration, at the last stage, the man is holding a sword, which is the realization of emptiness, to cut the two black lines symbolizing the two obscurations, so these two things coming out of his chest, the gross obscurations and the subtle obscurations. They're called klesha in Sanskrit. So klesha varana is the delusions, the obscurations due to delusion, and nye avarana are the obscurations to knowledge, or the obscuration to omniscience. The knowledge of emptiness is essential to remove ignorance. Once a person has got close to understanding emptiness completely, he's on his way to the perfection of wisdom, which is the complete realization of emptiness. Okay, so that was today's little diversion. But, kind of important. And of course, we know, to accomplish, accomplish calm abiding, to attain the 9th, 10th, 11th stages there, it has to be done on the basis of pure moral conduct. So keeping our precepts and avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, and doing a lot of purification practice and creating a lot of merit, as I always say, to prepare the ground for planting the seed. So again, verse 38, without the attainment of calm abiding, higher perception will not occur. Therefore, make repeated effort to accomplish calm abiding. How is it done? So this is Geshe Lama Rinpoche's commentary now. By practicing placement meditation and developing meditative stabilization, in which bliss, the outcome of total mental and physical pliancy, is experienced. This is calm abiding. I said that before. So Maitreya's ornament of Mahayana Sutras describes the 9 stages of increasing mental stability, which lead to this state. Another of his 5 texts that Asanga brought back from Tushita is a differentiation of the middle way and the extremes. So that's called Utanamche in Tibetan, Madhyanta Vibhanga Karika. And there was one of Lama Yeshe's favorite texts, and he taught that to us starting in I think 77, and he taught it, I think, in 5 stages, in Kopan Monastery and at Manjushri Institute in England when we owned that. So I think those are the 2 places he taught it. I think 2 or 3 times at Copan, a couple of times in England. And, one of my strong wishes is that we could publish that, but it's very specialized teaching. And there's also another of Maitreya's texts called Chönyi Namche, or Dharma Dharmata. It's another of the 5 texts. And Lama taught that in Madison, Wisconsin in 1977. At that time, Geshe Zopa had a sabbatical, and for some reason he took his sabbatical in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think he got a gig teaching at the university down there. So I don't know what kind of sabbatical that is, but anyway, he went down there for 6 months or so, and then he asked Lama to babysit his students for a while. So Lama stayed at Geshe Zopa's house in Madison, Wisconsin, I think maybe for 6 weeks. It was in the spring of 77. So he was there doing that, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche went to Laudo. And I went to Laudo with a bunch of other people with Rinpoche, and we did Nyungne and hung out in Laudo for a while. It was the last time I went to Laudo. The last of 3 times. So Lama gave 16 teachings on the Chönyi Namche Dharma Dharmata. And in a lot of these teachings, John Landau was Lama's teaching assistant. And John has been editing the Wisconsin teaching. And so he was Lama's teaching assistant there. John's been editing that for quite a while. He hasn't been well lately, so it's slowed down, but I'm hoping he'll finish that, and then he'll be able to turn his attention to editing the Uta Namche, this one, the differentiation in the middle and extremes. There is a commentary published, commentary by Trungpa Rinpoche has been published in English, and I think there's another one, I can't remember now. Anyway, so that was the only text that Lama taught in that depth in 5 sessions over a number of years. So that text describes the 5 faults and how to overcome them through the application of the 8 counteractions. So we won't go into those right now. When trying to develop a calmly abiding mind, continuous practice with the same focal object is essential. So if we're trying to make a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together, we can't break off and take a break and then start again later. Success depends on continuity. So if we decide to try to develop our single point of concentration by meditating on a visualization of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, that's what we should always use as our object. You can't visualize him and then another time Tara, and then another time Manjushri. We have to keep the same object. So they say another one of the advantages of practicing Tantra is, after we have a good understanding or even some realization of the lamrim, we're qualified to receive initiation from a qualified master and take tantric vows and receive commentaries on sadhana, method of accomplishment. And one of the things we're allowed to do once we've had initiation is to visualize ourselves as the deity. So it's said that developing single point of concentration or shamatha by visualizing yourself as the deity And the two qualities of that meditation are divine pride. You know, I am Manjushri. I am Vajrayogini. Divine pride, you know, pride of actually being an enlightened being in the aspect of the deity, whatever your deity is. Karma by divine pride and clear appearance. So you have strong belief that you are this enlightened deity, and you have a very clear image of yourself as the deity. So meditating, using that as the object of concentration, is said to be quicker to achieve karma binding than what we call the sutra way, by visualizing the Buddha in front of us, or whatever our object is. I don't think you develop shamatha by just using your breath as the object. Focusing on the breath is just kind of the warm-up. We need something with more detail. Success depends on continuity. So if we can start our development of Shinny in retreat, we do a month or 3 months or a year or 3 years, whatever we can take, then that's, and we do it every, 4 sessions a day, every day for weeks or months or years, then obviously that's going to be, you're going to have more chance of success. And they say that you can actually, if your mind is well prepared, if you go into retreat, you can achieve this shamatha, all 9 stages, within a year. So I don't know anyone who's done it. No one. I don't know anyone who said they did. I know one person who said he'd done it, but I don't believe him. But there are, I've never, and it's something, if you do accomplish it, you shouldn't blah 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 about it, because talking about your realizations, it says opens you up to harm from spirits and weakens the realization. So you can discuss it with your teacher, but even your Dharma friends, you shouldn't talk about it. I know a number of people who've tried to develop shamatha, but I've never heard that they were successful. So, don't know. There was one of the students from the 3rd course who, by the end of the course, he was so gung-ho to get enlightened, and which is good, but he was a little too gung-ho. And he said, this is it. Now I'm going into retreat for the rest of my life if necessary, but whatever I have to do to get enlightened. So then he went off to Dharamsala after the Kopan course, and he got a room at Tushita, the retreat center, and he started meditating to reach enlightenment. I don't know what he was meditating on, and he'd only done a 1-month course. But after a year of doing this, he got terrible wind disease. He couldn't keep his body. I think I might have mentioned this before. He couldn't keep his body straight. Whenever he sat to meditate, his body would keep tipping over. And then Lama Yeshe told him to come back to Kopan and try to do meditation there. So we had some little retreat rooms at Kopan. So he went into one of those, but still he had this problem. And his legs were swelling up. He asked me for a medical consultation. At that point, I still remembered something. and but I didn't know what the hell was going on. It was just what we call lung, wind disease, the imbalance of the internal elements. Because he wasn't ready, he wasn't prepared. Not enough merit, not enough purification. But he was so determined that, Lama Yeshe didn't say, no, you're not ready. Lama let him go. And this was one of Lama's things, that if you had strong energy to do something, he would never just stop you like that. If you're trying to jump off a roof, he might stop you, but I don't remember that happening. But, and so as I've mentioned before, people would come to him with all kinds of crazy ideas to how to do this project or how to raise money or how to do, and he would never just say, no, that's a bad idea. He would say, yeah, good idea, dear, but then he would steer the person gently away from that into a better direction. Yeah, so that's what happened. So the monk, the guy, he tried it for all of 73. He tried to meditate at Tushita in Dharamsala, and then he got permission to be ordained as a monk. So that's when 10 of us were ordained together in Bodh Gaya in 74. He came back from that. He came out of retreat for that, and then went back to Nepal, to Kopan, into the retreat room, and by the time of the 6th course in the spring of 74, Lama Yeshe told him to come out of retreat and do the course. And then he, instead of going back to the retreat, then Lama Yeshe sent him down to Kathmandu to set up a company to do business. So that was... So if, he had this energy to do all this meditation till he reached enlightenment, and Lama had said, no, I want you to go to Kathmandu and start a business, that would have been terrible conflict for him, because he would have always had this feeling that he'd been thwarted, that he knew that what he really wanted to do, but Lama made him do business. So Lama put him through these trials and tribulations till he realized, okay, maybe this is not going to work after all. So he's still in Kathmandu doing business. It's like nearly 50 years later. As far as I know, he hasn't reached enlightenment either. But to do business to support, to make money to support the monastery. In our efforts to help others, we are severely limited by lack of knowledge. There's so much we don't know about ourselves and the working of our own mind, let alone about others, their needs and their capacities. Usually when we try to help, we're guessing, but sometimes our guess is right, sometimes wrong. With the different forms of higher perception or super knowledge, our help will always be appropriate. The first form of higher perception is knowledge of miraculous feats. With this, we can travel to Buddha lands and make offerings to the enlightened ones. We can effortlessly find and gather together students with whom we have a strong karmic connection. Having done this, we'll be able to give them good help through our knowledge of others' minds. The second kind of knowledge, which lets us discern their dispositions, interests, abilities, and inclinations. We can then teach them in a way which is entirely suited to their needs. So knowledge of miraculous feats, knowledge of others' minds. The third kind of higher perception is clairaudience, which allows us to hear what is going on in Buddha lands. This is considerably cheaper than the telephone. It enables us, also I don't think they have phones in the Pure Land, It enables us easily to learn the languages of our students in order to communicate with them directly. The fourth kind of higher perception is knowledge of past places. This refers to memory of past rebirths and enables us to recall the spiritual teachers, people, and practices with which we've had a previous close association. We can then seek out those teachers again and continue the practices with which we've already gained familiarity, thereby making faster progress. The fifth is clairvoyance regarding others' feelings of happiness or unhappiness. When we understand what they're experiencing, our help will address their needs. The sixth is knowledge of the end of contamination. This is a personal understanding gained through meditation and higher perception of the paths that lead to liberation and how to communicate them to others. Since bodhisattvas are entirely concerned with others' well-being, they only use these powers for beneficent purposes. Celestial beings in the intermediate state, beings in the intermediate state, and hungry spirits, pretas, are born with limited and partial forms of higher perception. If we happen to have a dream or intuition that comes true, we immediately suspect that we may possess clairvoyant powers. Bodhisattvas make a conscious and concerted effort to develop reliable forms of extrasensory perception for the sake of helping others. The heightened state of concentration that forms the basis for this is the same, whether attained by Buddhists or non-Buddhists. So, the Hindus, or whatever they were called back then, also practice these higher forms of meditation. And these higher forms of meditation are what lead to a rebirth in the form and formless realms, which are states of higher concentration, different levels. When accompanied by sincere refuge in the three jewels, it is a Buddhist practice. When accompanied by a strong wish to gain freedom from cyclic existence, it acts as a cause for liberation. While the intention to attain enlightenment for the sake of all living beings makes it a Mahayana practice. A calmly abiding mind is necessary for attaining special insight according to the Sutra tradition and for attaining the stages of generation and completion in the practice of Tantra. So highest yoga Tantra has these two stages, the generation stage and the completion stage. While Atisha stresses its importance as a foundation for higher perception, calm abiding, Shantideva and other great masters point out that only through special insight into reality can we eliminate the ignorance that lies at the root of psychic existence, and that such special insight cannot be developed without a calmly abiding mind, without shamatha. As Geshe Rapton said, with the monk riding on the elephant with the sword, we use our development of shamatha, calm abiding, to meditate on emptiness. Even if we do not succeed in developing this heightened state of meditative stabilization, we can enhance our mental stability and concentration. This will make our meditation, our daily prayers, and practice of virtue much more effective. If we wish to achieve anything powerful, we must learn to concentrate. In the chapter on maintaining mental alertness in Bodhicharyavatara, in the guide, Shantideva reminds us that distraction weakens everything we do. So this verse from Bodhicharyavatara says, the one who knows reality, Buddha, has said that even if recitation and austerities are practiced for a long period, their practice with a distracted mind is meaningless. So it's a little commentary on the practices we do at the moment, unfortunately. The explanation of how to gain higher perception through developing a calm, abiding mind has three parts. First, the prerequisites are discussed. Then the method of cultivating calm abiding is described. And finally, the great benefits of developing are mentioned. So 39, verse 39. While the conditions for calm abiding are incomplete, meditative stabilization will not be accomplished, even if one meditates strenuously for thousands of years. So the person I mentioned, his conditions for calm abiding were incomplete. So, Lama didn't make him meditate for thousands of years. After a year, he sent him down to do business. 40. Thus, maintaining well the conditions mentioned in the collection for meditative stabilization chapter, place the mind on any one virtuous focal object. So Geshe-la says, without creating the necessary conditions that foster the development of a calmly abiding mind, we may meditate 1,000 years without success. Asanga's hera stages lists 13 such conditions. Hera stages. So Shravaka Bhumi, I'm not familiar with that. But here Atisha advises to refer to the chapter on the collection for meditative stabilization to learn about the essential prerequisites. So the footnote, this is the Samadhi Sambhara Parivata by Bodhibhadra. Bodhibhadra succeeded Naropa as northern doorkeeper at the monastic university of Nalanda. Only eminent scholars capable of defending Buddhist philosophical tenets and presenting an intellectual challenge to those who wish to enter were appointed to these positions. So from this, it seems that Nalanda Monastery had 4 main gates, east, north, south, and west, and highly learned scholars were appointed the gatekeepers. So I guess they hung out around the gate, drinking chai, and waiting for Hindus to come and challenge Buddhist philosophy, and then they would defeat them in debate. So to make sure that these heathens didn't get into Nalanda, they had to get past the gatekeeper. So I guess you had to prove yourself knowledgeable of Buddhist philosophy to get in. I'm just making all this up. I don't know. But so Bodhibhadra was, so we know Naropa was this great scholar, and he was in the library one day, and he had a vision of a Dakini, and she told him, you know the words, but you don't know the meaning. He says, well, how do I find out the meaning? And then she said, go and find your teacher, Tilopa. So then he left the monastery and went in search of his teacher, Tilopa. So then Bodhibhadra was appointed gatekeeper of the Northern Gate, and he apparently wrote this text, the Samadhi, single point concentration, Sambara Parivata, which is called the chapter on the collection for meditative stabilization. So I don't know if that's available in English, but that's where you have to learn about the essential prerequisites. In his commentary on the lamp, Atisha says this was written by his master Bodhibhadra. Also, he was one of Atisha's teachers, who mentions 9 factors. So here we go. The first is eliminating demonic activities, which act as hindrances to our practice of the teachings and to the accomplishment of our own and others' good. Though we do encounter external obstacles, the principal hindrances lie within our own mind and arise from our own mental busyness. Jingwa, agopa, in scattering. We need to rid ourselves of that. So I think these are the demonic activities. They're the running rampant through our own mind of our various delusions. So unless we calm our mind of those, so that's like at the beginning of the path, you know, where we have the rope and the hook, and the elephant is way ahead of us. The mad elephant mind. The second condition necessary for the development of a calm abiding consists of preparation for the practice of the teachings and the accomplishment of our own and others' good in the form of sufficient study. Some people are under the misconception that if one intends to meditate, one doesn't need to study. But if we don't hear and study the teachings, our approach to contemplation will be superficial and we will lack certainty about how to proceed. So there's that saying from the old yogis, one who meditates without first studying is like an armless rock climber. The third condition necessary is to desist from teaching or trying to work for others.
Okay, I found this on the web for is the
Siri is listening to the teachings. Did I say? Anyway, sorry. The third is to desist from teaching or trying to work for others until we've disciplined our own mind and developed higher perception. Did you catch that? I've got an Australian Siri. This is scattering in action. The third is to desist from teaching or trying to work for others until we've disciplined our own mind and developed higher perception. Well, I'm not teaching, I'm just sort of sharing what others have said. So, I'm not breaking the rules here. The intention behind giving the Buddha's teaching to others is to help them discipline their mind. If we cannot control our own mind, we're not in a good position to advise others. Whether the teachings spread and flourish depends on the people who hold and propagate them, particularly on their conduct. Through their own practice and pure lifestyle, they set an example for others. The teachings are about getting rid of confusion and ignorance and creating the causes for happiness. If we want to help others in this, we must do it ourselves. This, and not the presence of buildings such as temples or monasteries, indicates that the teachings are flourishing. Nevertheless, if we practice sincerely, there's much we can teach and do for others, even before we've gained complete mental control and higher perception. The fourth condition is to, this is in quotations, is to stop the pain. For example, we may have studied extensively, but instead of using what we've learned to transform ourselves and get rid of the disturbing emotions, we use it to gain respect and reward. This is like a person who's carried off by the current and is dying of thirst, though surrounded by water. Whether or not we find the respect and reward we seek, we still continue to suffer mental torment from the disturbing emotions. Shantideva warns us not to become scholars concerned with respect and praise. Yet in his prayer of aspiration, at the end of engaging the Bodhisattva's deeds, he makes the wish that those with knowledge may be honored, since he wants all being to have what they desire. So stop the pain, eradicate our own delusions, our own disturbing emotions. The fifth is to develop aversion not only toward the concerns of this life, but to cyclic existence in general, the renunciation. As already mentioned, without the wish to be free from cyclic existence, our practice of calm abiding will not act as a cause for liberation. We'll get stuck in these higher realms, in the form and formless realms, in these absorptions. The sixth is to remember the benefits derived from developing a calmly abiding mind. Happiness and peace in our physical, verbal, and mental activities are effects experienced in this life. Since the development of calm abiding is something positive, it contributes to preventing bad rebirths and allows us to visit Buddha lands at any time. In the chapter on concentration in engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds, Shantideva devotes 4 verses to describing the pleasures of seclusion and the simple life needed for the practices of calm abiding. He asks, when shall I be able to live in the forest with the deer, birds, and trees, who never speak unpleasantly and whose companionship brings happiness? I love that verse. It's so kind of wistful. It really kind of evokes the pure ascetic life. When shall I be able to live in the forest with the deer, birds, and trees, who never speak unpleasantly and whose companionship brings happiness? If you like city life and enjoy being where the action is, the practice of calm abiding is not for you. The Tibetan word for a monastery means an isolated place. Gompa. But there are monks who prefer to be in town. They are in the wrong job. Physical seclusion means being away from all that busyness. But just as essential is seclusion from mental busyness. So that's what Lama Zopa Rinpoche often says, make your mind a cave. Make your mind the cave. How calm our life would be without both these kinds of commotion. External commotion and internal commotion. The 7th prerequisite is enthusiastic effort. Thinking about the benefits of calm abiding mind and of calm abiding and of a secluded way of life will arouse our interest. But we must also recognize the transience of our precious human life, how rare it is and how great its potential. When we realize how short life is, our enthusiasm for the practice and willingness to make effort in it will grow. So the eighth necessary condition consists of various combinations of two factors. We wish to attain the two kinds of body of an enlightened being, Dharmakaya, Rupakaya, the wisdom truth body and the form bodies. We do this through eliminating the two kinds of obstructions, those to liberation and those to complete knowledge of all phenomena. We seek a state which is beyond both cyclic existence and solitary peace, individual liberation. This is attained by combining skillful means and wisdom, and by combining calm abiding with special insight. In preparation for the development of calm abiding, we must accumulate sufficient knowledge of the practice through hearing teachings and through study. And we must support this by creating strong positive energy. Create a lot of merit. The ninth condition consists of the means to make the mind stable. We need to find a place, food, clothes, friends, and a routine that suit our constitution and temperament. Having created these conducive conditions, we must practice according to the instructions contained in the differentiation of the middle way and extremes, the Utinamche, the Maitreya text that Lama taught over a few years, remember? We must practice according to the instructions there, ridding ourselves of the 5 hindrances to calm abiding by applying the 8 counteractions. So we could spend some time looking at those 5 and 8, but I think we need to keep going here. But you can find them all over. The 4th volume of Geshe Zopa's Steps of the Path of Enlightenment, his commentary on the lamrim Chenmo, the 5 volumes published by Wisdom. The 4th one goes into great detail on development of concentration. In the Great Exposition, the Stages of the Path, in the lamrim Chenmo, 6 main conditions for developing calm abiding are mentioned. The first is to stay in a conducive place. The ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, Mahayana Sutra Lankara Sangha, Maitreya Sangha, describes it thus. In an intelligent person's place of practice, things are well found, the site is good, the ground is good, there are good friends, and the tools for a practitioner's happiness. It should be a place in which basic necessities like food and water can be easily and ethically procured. For example, the things provided by a benefactor should have been honestly acquired, without the 5 wrong livelihoods. Otherwise, our practice may be adversely affected. So this goes on for a bit, quite a bit. So I think it's better to start there next time and look at these prerequisites and for doing retreat. Yeah, I think we'll stop here and pick it up there. Pick it up there next week. Okay. 5-minute holiday. So we generated bodhicitta at the beginning. We've been looking at the teachings of these great lamas, Geshe Rabten and Geshe Sonam Rinchen, talking about the great Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. So, no question we've created a huge heap of merit, which we need, as it says, to develop calm abiding and to achieve success in our practice in many other ways. So we should dedicate that merit to prevent it from being destroyed. So think, because of this merit, may I quickly reach enlightenment for the sole purpose of enlightening all sentient beings. So, really feel how precious this merit is, how hard it is to create, how rare it is to create extensive merit. So we really want to protect it and make sure that it goes to the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Sashi perki juxing me tok tram ri rab ling jini de gien pa di sange shindu mikte orwagi drokon lam da jing la cher pa shuk Jetsun lame kutse rab ten ching nam katrin le chok cher ge pa dan lo sang ten pedren me sasungi drowe mun sel tak tu negur chig yidam guru ratna mandalakam niryatayami. From my two collections, vast a space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this graded course to enlightenment completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their children. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chen Rizig remain in life till samsara's end. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majjhina's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained the Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious Supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Mig me tse we ter me Kenpe Wang Po Jam Pel Yan Gang Chen Kepe Tsu Gen Song Kapa Lo Sang Rak Pe Jabla Solwa De. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Have a good time, and see you next week.
Thanks,
Nick.
Nick. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Bob.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Welcome.
See y'all.
Cha-cha.